The dream of going pro is sold as a meritocracy, where talent rises to the top like cream. In reality, it is a high stakes financial arms race that starts long before the scouts arrive. You aren't just competing against the kid across the street, you are competing against their parents' bank accounts. If you want to reach the highest level in sports today, you need to be prepared for a journey that can cost anywhere from $50,000 to $500,000. Let's start with the sport that dominates American youth culture, baseball. Travel baseball is where the dream goes to die for the middle class. By age 10, a serious player is expected to join an elite travel team. You are looking at $3,000 in registration fees annually. Then come the tournaments. You have to travel. Hotels, flights, and meals for a family for 40 weekends a year add up to $10,000. Equipment isn't cheap either. High-end bats cost $400, gloves run $200, professional private coaching sessions cost $80 an hour. If you want the kid to be seen, they have to go to showcase camps. These are run by third-party companies that charge players to be evaluated by college scouts. Each showcase costs $500 to $1,000. Over 10 years, a family chasing a Division I scholarship or a pro draft spot will easily burn through $150,000. That is the cost of a down payment on a house, gone on travel, plastic bats, and motel breakfasts. Then there is tennis. Tennis is the original pay-to-play nightmare. In tennis, you don't just pay for coaching, you pay for the lifestyle. A competitive junior player needs a private coach, a fitness trainer, and a mental performance coach. A top-tier academy, places like the IMG Academy in Florida, will set you back $80,000 a year. That includes tuition and housing. If you aren't at an academy, you are flying across the country for USTA-sanctioned tournaments. The International Tennis Federation travel circuit is where the real money vanishes. You are flying a parent or a coach to Europe or Asia for tournaments. You are paying for stringing services, tournament entry fees, and the brutal reality of hotel costs. If a kid wants to hit the professional ATP or WTA tour, their parents are likely out $400,000 by the time the player turns 18. That is why the sport is still disproportionately represented by kids from wealthy backgrounds. You need a venture capital level investment just to see if your kid has a backhand. Compare that to basketball. Basketball is perceived as the great equalizer. It is the sport of the neighborhood court. But even that has been sanitized. The grassroots circuit is dominated by shoe company sponsored teams. If you want to play for a top tier AAU team, you aren't just paying for jerseys, you are paying for the access. These teams travel to circuit tournaments in Vegas, Atlanta, and Dallas. Families spend upwards of $20,000 a year just to keep their kid on the circuit. This is the only way to get a blue chip ranking on sites like Rivals or 247 Sports. Without that ranking, the college coaches don't even look at your highlight reel. It is a closed system. The equipment might just be a ball and a pair of sneakers, but the entry fee to the ecosystem is a mortgage payment. Now, let's look at the sport that requires the most obscure investment, golf. Golf is a sport of attrition. There are no teammates to hide behind. You need a coach, a caddy, and access to private clubs. To be competitive, a junior golfer needs to play 5 days a week at a course that costs $5,000 a year in dues. Then you have the AJGA circuit. The American Junior Golf Association is the gatekeeper to college golf. Traveling to these tournaments requires a massive budget. A top-level junior golfer's season can cost $50,000 in travel and entry fees alone. By the time a golfer turns professional, they are usually in debt. The first few years on the minor league tours, like the Korn Ferry Tour, are pure loss. You are paying your own caddy, your own flights, and your own insurance. Most players spend their early 20s living in budget motels, hoping to break even. It is a sport designed to be funded by someone who already has money. What about soccer? In Europe, the model is different. The clubs invest in the kids. But in the United States, the pay-to-play model is king. Elite youth clubs charge thousands in annual dues. The best players often leave home at 14 to join an MLS Next Academy. If the club doesn't cover all the costs, the family is responsible for travel and housing. The barrier to entry isn't just talent, it's the ability to sustain a lifestyle that centers entirely around the sport for a decade. This is why our national team development lags behind countries where the club system identifies talent in underprivileged areas and funds their entire trajectory. But the most expensive sport isn't one you play on a field, it is motorsports. If you want your kid to be an F1 driver, start by buying a kart. A competitive junior kart costs $5,000. A race-ready engine costs $2,000. You will go through 3 engines in a year. Then you have tires, fuel, and track fees. By the time the kid is 12, you have spent $50,000. If they show promise, you move up to F4 or F3. These are the feeder series for Formula One. A single season in Formula 4 can cost $300,000. By the time a driver reaches the pinnacle of the sport, their family has spent millions. You don't get into an F1 car through raw grit alone. You get there because your parents bought the car, the team, and the seat. This pattern holds across almost every athletic endeavor. Swimming requires year-round club dues and travel meets. Hockey requires ice time, which is astronomically expensive, plus pads, sticks, and travel to cold weather hubs. Gymnastics requires world-class coaching in facilities that charge thousands per month. We talk about the starving artist or the hungry athlete, but the reality is that the path to the pros is paved with gold. When we look at a professional athlete, we are often looking at the culmination of a 20-year financial strategy. Is there an exception? Sure. There are outliers. There are kids who show up at a park with hand-me-down shoes and shatter every expectation. But those stories are rare, and they are usually bolstered by community support systems that are becoming harder to find. As the cost of specialized coaching, technology, and travel increases, the gap between the talented and the privileged widens. Data from the Aspen Institute shows that youth sports participation among lower-income households has plummeted over the last decade. It's too expensive. When sports become a luxury good, we aren't just losing talent, we are losing the diversity of experience that makes sports interesting in the first place. We are moving toward a world where professional athletes are not necessarily the best at their sport. They are the ones whose parents could afford the best path. They are the products of an optimized financial pipeline. So, what is the actual cost? If you want to hedge your bets, you are looking at a minimum of $10,000 a year for a decade of high-level competition. That's $100,000, assuming your kid is a prodigy who never gets injured and stays motivated. For most, it's closer to $250,000. That money goes to private coaches, elite travel teams, equipment, nutritionists, and physical therapists. It buys exposure. It buys a seat at the table. It buys the opportunity to be seen by the people who make the decisions. The dream of going pro has been commodified. The question isn't just, do you have the heart or do you have the skill anymore? The question that dictates the outcome is, do you have the capital? When we cheer for these athletes on our screens, we are cheering for a machine that costs millions to operate. We aren't just watching a game, we are watching the result of an investment. We have to ask ourselves, if we keep pricing out the rest of the world, what happens to the spirit of the game? Can a system built on exclusivity ever truly produce the greatest potential, or are we just picking the winners from a shrinking pool of the wealthy? The next generation of stars is currently being selected not just by scouts, but by accountants. And until we change the way we fund the journey, the path to the pros will remain a private road, paved with heavy tolls that most of the world simply cannot afford to pay.